Hi, I'm Riley.
And I'm Ryder. And this is my dad's show.
Hey everybody, it's Casey Jacox with the Quarterback Dadcast. I want to say thanks to all of our listeners, thanks to all of our sponsors for all your support. We are continuing to enjoy this journey together, inspiring dads, but I want to take a minute now to talk about Acme Homes. You've heard me talk about them before, but I'm going to talk about them again. Bob Cumming, former college teammate, amazing leader, amazing home builder. They continue to take so much pride in the work they do, the craftsmanship, the attention to detail. Whether you're looking for a home up in Monroe, up in Sultan, up in Wenatchee, this is where they're doing their amazing things. So many people during the pandemic, as we have the ability to work from home, have decided to move out of the city to try to find homes where there's more acreage. Well, that's exactly what Bob and team at Acme Homes give you. So check out Valley Vista up in Monroe. Check out Daisy Meadows out in Sultan. And if you want to even go to Eastern Washington, check out Sienna Heights in Wenatchee. They're, again, amazing craftsmanship, amazing floor plans. You can visit them at acmehomeswa.com. And if you're interested in learning specifically about listings or mortgage opportunities, contact Jen at 425-308-8082 or Denise at 425-309-2318. So now, why are we doing a new ad? Because we want to talk about a partnership they have with Portage Bank. Kevin Jensen is one of the great lenders over there. He's a senior vice president. He's going to take care of you. And right now, if you obtain a mortgage through Portage Bank, Bob and team at Acme Homes are going to pay your $500 appraisal fee. I said that right. They're going to pay your $500 appraisal fee by buying a home through them, getting your mortgage through the folks at Portage Bank. So don't wait. Now's the time to contact Jen, contact Denise. Again, Jen's number is 425-308-8082. Again, Denise is at 425-309-2318. Visit acmehomeswa.com right now. Don't wait. Thank you again for listening to the Quarterback Dadcast. So with that, let's get right to today's episode. Well, hey everybody, it's Casey Jacox with the Quarterback Dadcast. We are in season 3. It is December 10th when we're recording. This episode will come out next year. And I'm excited to have on our next guest. His name is David J.P. Fisher, goes by D-Fish. I heard this gentleman from my main man, Andy Paul, on his podcast. And I think I just loved his... I love the way he communicated. I love the way I could tell he was a curious guy. I can tell he was a connector. We had a call and I'm like, I got to get you on the podcast, man. And not only that, he's an author of, he's got 3 books, I think. He's got Networking for the 21st Century on LinkedIn, Networking in the 21st Century, and then Hyper-Connected Selling. I'm looking at all 3 books right now. I can't wait to read them. But now that this guy's ego is all jacked up, we want to bring him down a level because we're not going to talk about that much. We're going to talk about D-Fish, the dad. We're going to learn about how he grew up, how his parents impacted him, and now he's striving to become that ultimate quarterback or leader of his household. So without further ado, D-Fish, welcome to the Quarterback Dadcast.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here. I actually get to guest on a lot of podcasts where we talk about selling and networking and social media and digital sales. And I know so much about all those things. I have a lot of fun. I'm excited to talk about a topic I think I know very little about. And every day I'm proven right. So this will be fun.
Moving our dad skills. That's what we're all on this journey of fatherhood together. And
exactly.
I have a 15-year-old and 13-year-old, and I'm still making mistakes. But if we as dudes and dads can start talking, communicating, and ask for help where we need help, I think we're all going to help other dads become better leaders at home.
True that.
Okay, so we always start out each episode with, tell me, what are you most grateful for as a father right now?
What am I most grateful for as a father? I've got a 2.5-year-old and a little guy on the way, coming out. His launch is in about 5 months. Really, we're getting the launch marketing program together, all that. It's very cliched, but I really understand it to be true. Is I'm grateful that he's healthy. He's a great kid. I mean, the one in the womb is healthy too, but everything else you can work with. But just like when we get sick, it's tougher. If he's sick, it's tougher. So that's what I'm grateful for.
Well, it's an easy answer, but it's one that a lot of people should never take for granted because like our health is everything.
Exactly.
I'm grateful for, I've said this on a couple other episodes, but I'm going to say it again. My father is we believe at the end of life he's in hospice, and so he's had a tough journey with dementia and Alzheimer's and a bunch of other health stuff. But these last few weeks, we've had some great time with him, and my son and daughter have spent time with them, and the dementia is kind of almost going away, I think, at the end of his life. And we've had some just really cool moments of, him remembering just random stuff. And so I'm so grateful that my kids have seen me, their dad, cry. I'm grateful for they get to see dad care for a loved one at the end of a life and to kind of set the example. And they never once, when I say, hey, let's go see grandpa, they don't be like, oh, I don't want to go do it. They're like, oh, it'd be so much fun. And so I'm so grateful for them wanting to help support me as my dad gets ready to pass. But it's been a cool couple weeks.
That's excellent. Well, and it's also good that they're saying you take care of him so that when you're a little older, they'll be, of course we got to take care of dad.
Right. Exactly.
That's good.
Right. Exactly. Okay. So tell me, what does the huddle inside the D-Fish family look like? Tell me that we got one in the womb, but tell me the other players in the huddle here at home.
Well, my son Liam is at his 2.5, and then my wife Helen, and that's it. So pretty small and agile, hostile, mobile.
There we go.
Yeah.
And you guys are in Chicago?
So we're located just outside of Chicago in a town called Glenview. Actually, we were literally in a town called Evanston, with our alley being the border of Evanston and Chicago for almost 17 years. I went to Northwestern University, which is located there in Evanston, and just kind of stuck around. But we needed a little more space, so we moved a little farther out. But we're still pretty close to the city. Cool.
Well, before we dive into some early life stuff, to talk about how you got into sales and maybe talk about how the passion for wanting to write a book, where that come from.
Yeah, so I got into sales as many people do. We kind of stumble into it, right? We accidentally trip and fall into a sales career. And as I say, I was at Northwestern, got a degree in history, so nothing to do with business or sales or anything like that. But I got my start selling Cutco cutlery, which I'm sure some of your listeners have heard of. It's they're fantastic knives. I actually just sold a set the other day to a friend of mine because I'm still passionate about it. But it's all direct in-home sales, not door to door. It's only by referral. But so at 20, I was sitting across from Mr. and Mrs. Jones and selling very high quality and not inexpensive knives. But was very successful. At one point, was number 6 in the company. So did pretty well, paid my way through school doing that, and then ran their Chicago office for 5 years. So I ended up interviewing over 10,000 people, trained about 1,500 sales reps. So kind of got my real world MBA in sales very, very early. I kind of joke that I was 22 running a $500,000 a year sales company with absolutely no clue what I was doing. But that's how you learn. It's why I like the LinkedIn posts that often you'll see these. They're like, failure is great. You can learn so much from failure, and that's absolutely true. But they always forget just how much failure also sucks. Right at the same time, it's not fun to go through, but
no,
so I had a lot of success, a lot of failure, but it was a great kind of trial by fire or baptism by fire, I guess, in the sales. And then I've just kind of stuck with it. I've actually run my own consulting firm for the last 15 years, doing sales, coaching, training, all that kind of stuff. So still very much in the world of helping salespeople, business owners, entrepreneurs, leverage all the tools we have to influence. So that's kind of how I got into it. And writing books was just something a couple of years ago. I was like, I want to write a book. I've seen other people do it. I was trying to, build my career and my personal brand. And it's actually not 3 books. I've written 12. So
wow, I only have 3 then.
I gave you the best 3. I'm not saying all 12 are good.
12 books, damn.
But yeah, so. You might be able to see, because we are on video, there's a shelf right there. But the books next to the bonsai tree, those are all the books I've written. So
wow,
my goal is to fill that shelf up by the time I kick it. So
good for you.
And it's a fun discipline. Writing every day is something I've developed over the last probably about 7 years. And it's I find that writing helps you think more than anything. I always joke that you write books to figure out what they're about.
Very cool. When you wrote, did you, in your journey, I'm interested if you went through the same thing? Like there's days I felt like, dude, I'm like Hemingway. This is, and then I get it, someone review it and dude, this sucks. This is horrible. And there's days I thought I sucked and they're like, oh my God, this is great. I'm like, what?
The best book I read relatively early on about writing was why am I totally blank on authors' names all the time, and he's super famous. Horror, Stephen King. There you go. So Stephen King wrote a book called On Writing, and it's a really interesting book. He's got a great humility to him, but he also has this very blue collar working class approach to writing. And he's literally like, this is my job. I show up every day. It might be horrible. It might be great, but and he kind of outlined that you just do the work. You're not waiting for inspiration or anything. And for whatever reason, I took that kind of sunk in with me. So yeah, I've had that same experience. Some days you're like, wow, these ideas are flowing and this is going to be fantastic. And some days it's just you're pulling teeth. But I've also learned the value of a good editor. So they're always going to make me sound a lot smarter than I really am. So,
well, if any of my editors are listening, no disrespect, but the best editor I didn't have to pay a dime for. You know who it is?
I have a guess. Tell me who it is.
My wife.
Yep. Yeah.
My wife, Carrie, man, she was a beast. She's like, the editors changed a few things, and she's like, "This isn't your voice." I'm like,
yeah.
And she knew, because I've someone asked me who trained you to be a conversationalist writer? I'm like, I have no idea what that means. Like, what are you talking about? And I think just being in business to business, like writing biz dev emails for years, you always focus on tone and how someone's going to read it. And so I think that's why maybe it helped us write when we did.
Yeah, especially in the nonfiction world, one of the biggest compliments I've gotten and receive every once in a while is, it sounds like you're talking to me. And that for me, and the kind of work, and again, you as well, the kind of stuff we're writing, that's what we want. It's like, I want to be right next to you, just chatting with you over the coffee house table going, this is how you do this is how you do that. So,
yep.
Yeah. And the people we know well, the ones really close to us will tell us not only if we're getting the tone wrong, but also they'll be like, they're like, I love you, but this is awful. Or I love you, but this is really good. You're
not good. You stink.
Right.
Okay. So I want to go back in time, and I want to understand how you tell me where you grew up. Tell me how your brothers or sisters, and then maybe talk about how your parents, your journey of growing up, impacted you as a father right now.
Oh, sure. So I grew up on the south side of Milwaukee. So I'm a Midwestern boy. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. So I came from a good Irish Catholic clan in the south side of Milwaukee. In fact, my mom's one of 10. My dad's one of 7. So lots of aunts and uncles, lots of cousins. I think I have, if we total them up from both sides once, I have about 70 first cousins. So, yeah, it's pretty extensive. So yeah, I'm relatively straightforward, lower middle class upbringing. My dad worked for the post office for 30 years. My mom tried to wrangle 5 children. So, which, I mean, if I look back and, I've got 1.5 and I'm sometimes pulling my hair out. I don't even know. There are days where I look at my parents and I'm just like, how did you do it? And my mom just goes, I don't know. You just did. That's just kind of how things worked back then.
No iPads back then.
I'm sorry, what?
They didn't have iPads back then.
They didn't have iPads. They also, just kind of kicked you out onto the streets and said, just be home by sundown. And so I think it was a different world in many ways. And so that was kind of my upbringing. Had a chance, one thing that I was very grateful to my parents for, still am, is education was really big for them. My father's father was a teacher. Oh, I'm sorry, my mother's father was a teacher. All of my aunts and uncles, and again, we go back to the kind of where are we at, 40s, 50s, 60s. This isn't necessarily a given. Everybody went to private high schools. They, paid for Catholic schools. They paid to get them to college. Almost every single one of my those, 15 aunts and uncles went to college, many of them have advanced degrees. So just education was really critical. And in fact, my father, growing up in Milwaukee, there's a Jesuit high school called Marquette. It used to be part of Marquette University. But that's where my dad went to high school. And the joke is when he found out I was a son, he's like, well, he's going there too, because he was it's an all boys school. And just an amazing experience. I mean, it's one of the best high schools in the state, probably in the country. But just that, just looking back, my parents were willing to sacrifice, make sure their kids were getting a good education. I mean, but even, on the side of that, I joke that the summers were spent either at the high school pool where I was in swim classes, because the way you take care of 5 kids is you look at the brochure from the school district about all the different programs, and you get your kids in them. But the other thing is I was either there or I was at the library, and and books were a big thing. And just again, so I think growing up in that environment was really impactful. I mean, I'm a big honking nerd, probably genetically, but to be in that environment, you ask about how you write books. Well, you read a lot of books, right? And then you go, well, I want to write my own. So I think that, looking back, I mean, that was a huge part of my upbringing. And the other thing that, really, I think was a learning experience that is more for modeling is just kind of work ethic. And I don't even mean work ethic like this, you got to work hard, you got to strive. And there's some of that, but really just this idea of getting it done. Right. I think there is this really strong, and maybe going back to even what we were talking about earlier with Stephen King, I said it's really this blue collar kind of thing where it's just like, it's the job. You get it done. You're like, hey, we got to do this. Let's do it. My dad worked for the post office for 30 years. I guarantee he didn't get excited every morning. And, I love people who are like, you got to have passion for your work. Yeah, sometimes. And sometimes you just got to be like, hey, you know what? We got to take care of the bills. We got to take care of business. I'm going to do that. So right. I think just very early on that idea of modeling. And one other thing that is relevant and very much to our conversation, you mentioned this before about curiosity and connecting. My parents were amazing networkers. They never read a book on it. Nobody ever said, here are the 5 tips of networking to them, but they were very involved in their, in the community, in the parish, the church that they grew up in. They were very involved. Like, we actually hated going around to just anything with my parents because we knew they'd stop and talk to somebody that they knew there, right? And it'd be the 5 or 10 minute chat, and you're like, come on, Mom, let's go. But they were very involved in civic organizations, and I think I learned from them also the power of not only connecting, but they're also very giving in those situations. So it was like, yeah, of course we're going to volunteer to, work at the summer festival. And, my dad ran that for years, at our church growing up. And, just this idea of not only being connected, but engaged. And tell me
where does that, I think that the snap, the blink, Malcolm Gladwell, that snap judgmental, that first thought is like stay at home mom and someone who works at the post office for 30 years. At least I don't think, oh my God, amazing networking people. Tell me where that came from, you think?
That's a really good question. I think I actually would say that part of it stems from actually, I think most of it stems from their family, but in 2 ways. One, when you grow up with that many siblings, I can only imagine, like, you're networking just at the dinner table, right? I mean, my mom jokes, and it's funny to think about this, but, they with 10 kids, and my grandparents, my mother's parents often had 1 or 2 foster kids as well, because I think at a certain point you're like, what's 1 or 2 more mouths to feed? But they would have dinner in 2 shifts. Because you can,
wow.
Think about how many people that is. Um, but so I think part of it was them growing up, and you'd have to ask them. So I'm just guessing here, but you have that many siblings, and those siblings have friends, and I think that's part of it. I also think it's part of them seeing their parents. I'll go back to my mom's family, for example. My grandfather, very involved, for example, in the veterans community, was very involved civically. My grandmother was a pistol. Like this is the South Side of Milwaukee. She was very involved in the civil rights movement in the 60s. She was, there's a picture of her with Lady Bird Johnson when Lady Bird Johnson came to town. She actually, there's in the South Side of Milwaukee where I grew up, there's an expressway that runs right along the lake, and it stops right where I grew up in my community. The reason it stops there is because my grandma basically led the fight to not let them come and have this expressway bifurcate the community. So she was very involved that way, and I think so much of as we're talking about parenting, so much of our lessons are not what we tell people, right? It's just whether it's your children or somebody else, they do what you do, right? And often subconsciously on your part and theirs. So I think that was a big part of it. It was just the idea of like, you are connected, you are in your community, and doing what you can to help out, and also going and asking for the help when you need it. So
yeah, it's a big one. I've actually had multiple episodes on like asking for help, being vulnerable, saying you're sorry. Us guys, sometimes we're not good at that, but I think when we do, and you can teach your kids, you help kind of change the cycle of ego getting in the way.
That's exactly it, right?
So as you think back, like I love. I mean, I think your history. I love that you know so much about your family, and that's one thing I always love when I talk to dads. Just I think it's so cool when people know about the family. Like it's one of those things that common sense you should, but not people, not many people do, to at least the level you do. But as you think about the power of networking, maybe at what age did you start realizing like, God, mom and dad know a ton of people, and that's kind of cool. They treat people well. Like when did you start seeing that and appreciate it?
I always joke that at 18, my dad was the dumbest man in the world. And every year he seems to, that I grow older, he seems to get smarter, right? Definitely, as a teenager, you kind of look at your parents and you're like, come on, you don't know anything. And you're like, oh my God, they really do. I actually don't think, my guess is probably my mid-20s is when I really understood it. Or at least was able to put some thinking around it. I mean, it does take a little bit of maturity, I think, to see that. And it took a while for me to figure that out. But I think even, I in my first book, the one that we just did, the second update, Networking in the 21st Century, I tell the story of my parents, of my dad getting me my first job, or actually it was my second, something like that. But because he knew there was a guy at work that he had worked with at some point, and then that guy had gone to run a different post office, but they still had lunch every once in a while and remained friends. And then that guy's wife ran a really high-end chocolate I don't even get chocolate store. And my dad comes home, and Summerfest is a huge thing in Milwaukee, and there's this company had to stand there. He's like, I got you a job. You're working for the Chocolate Swan at Summerfest. I was like, all right, thanks. I mean, that's good. I need some work, but
yeah.
So just even saying that, it's like, hey, you help people when you can. And when, he probably was talking with Bob Bassa. That was this guy's name. Bob and Mary Bassa ran the Chocolate Swan. Great people. And he's like, yeah, Bob, I got this kid. He's, freshman in high school. He needs some money. Can he work for you?
That's great.
So,
well, you joked about your thoughts whenever you'd go someplace. You're like, come on, mom, dad. Like, that's going to be you. Just know that, because that's me. My kids give me a hard time all the time.
Yeah.
Last leave the party. We could be in the most, pardon my French, shithole town randomly. I'm like, I'll run into somebody. I'm like, how the hell did that happen? Like,
right.
whether it's the airport, a random city. I'm like, that's going to be you, D-Fish.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Probably already.
I've already made peace with the fact that I will irritate the heck out of my kids. That's, I'm okay with that.
Are you starting to work on your dad jokes yet? Like start to build a repertoire?
Starting to work on, please. The reason I had kids was to at least give me an excuse for the dad jokes, right? So,
you want to hear? This is so random. Why I'm going to share this, but because I'm such a random person, I'll share it anyways.
Please.
I picked up my daughter and her friends, and the Kahoot, like the game, like interactive thing you can do, like in Zoom and when you're.
Yeah.
So I have that, but in the online school or like even the kids who go in the back in the classroom, they use Kahoot to make it fully interactive.
Okay.
And my daughter's unnamed friend in the back was joking that we think she might have passed gas. And I was like, Charlotte, did you, oh shoot, I just said her name. I said, did you, I go, sounds like you got the Kahoots back there, and they both laughed. And my daughter's like, Dad, you're so dumb. I'm like, then why are your friends laughing, honey? Because one, I'm laughing at my own joke, which why wouldn't I? But so like that was like my random dad joke that
I love it. Well, you just say, I'm not trying to make you laugh. The dad jokes are for us. We're just trying to amuse ourselves.
Seriously. So as you think about like now, and I think when we first talked, you told me that you and your wife had kids later in life.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah. So I think I got married a week after my 40th birthday, and we didn't have Liam until, well, I'm 45 now. So I guess 40, 42, 43.
Okay.
Yeah, it's tough when you have toddlers running around and creating a lack of sleep.
Well, I would highly recommend you watch the movie Parenthood. Steve Martin would be a great mentor for you.
Yes. Yeah, I have. Yeah, exactly.
But, it's funny. I mean, there's a lot of people who have kids late. We had kids, later. We had some friends that had kids in their early 20s. We had our son at 30.
Okay.
But I mean, as you know, having kids is the best, right? And I think my wife says it well. She says we have 18 seasons. Like I'm an athlete, so it's like 18 seasons to make an impact before they're gone.
Right.
So how do you shape, mold? I follow another. I don't know if you follow Ryan Holiday. He has a thing called The Daily Dad.
I'm not Daily Dad, but I know his books.
I love his book, but he's got this thing. He's like, it does a stoicism, daily stoic, but he has this thing called The Daily Dad. It's like, it's a blog for dads where it's simple, easy, digestible content. That I'm like, sometimes it's like, dude, how did you know I was going through that? I don't know if you kind of look for it.
Experience, whether it's parenthood or anything, it's really not as broad and diverse as we want to think it is, right? There's really only a couple tropes, a couple stories that always kind of keep repeating. That's why a motivational speaker can stand in front of an audience of 1,000 people and be relevant to all 1,000 of them, because there's only so many ways that our kids can drive us nuts is the way I look at it.
That's a good point. So for dads out there at home or families out there at home that have followed in the same path, you guys are on the same path of maybe decide to have kids a little later. Mm-hmm. Talk about tell me two or a couple things that's been, oh my God, it's the best. And talk about a couple challenges that they might relate to you on.
Yeah. I mean, what's interesting is I think you're going to have kids at the time you're supposed to have kids, right? There's not I've heard discussions better earlier versus later. I know for me that having children later was a godsend. Like the D-Fish who's 42 is orders of magnitude better father than the David of 32 or definitely of 22. But that was just because of the path that I had to be on personally. I think that what's been great for me, just having kids later is actually knowing that it's not necessarily always going to be a great experience. I think, if you want to talk about, just the idea of communication and what we're doing as dads or as parents, I think this has changed a lot in our generation versus previous generations. And I think part of that is because not everybody is, my parents had children older, and I'm doing air quotes there because my mom was 26. Right. And, if you go back a generation, dude, like she was an old maid at that point, holy cow. And again, I think of myself at 26, I was barely able to keep myself alive, right? Um, joking aside, though, what I think
Hey everybody, it's Casey Jacox. I want to take a quick break to talk about my friends up at Catch Sitka Seafoods who continue to be just an amazing loyal sponsor. And for those of you who've tried it, thank you. For those of you who haven't, you're missing out. And now's the time to make sure that you visit catchsitkaseafoods.com and get some of those amazing smoked salmon. Get some of that amazing rockfish, blackfish, black cod, salmon, whatever it might be, whatever you like. But what's great about opportunities they have, now's the time to subscribe to a box so that you're going to get that reliable cadence of the best fish directly from the dock to the doorstep. And what's great about Catch Sitka Seafoods, they make it so easy. So those that maybe aren't the best chefs at home, who doesn't matter. They're going to give you this beautiful, nice laminated recipe card that tells you exactly how long to cook it, whether you're going to barbecue, you're going to bake, you're going to fry, whatever the way you want to do it, they're going to make it easy. So please visit them today, catchsitkaseafoods.com. Sign up for a subscription so that you know you're going to get the best fish delivered directly to your door. You won't regret it. And just like my daughter Riley says, Dad, I don't even like fish. And she does now because of my friends up at Catch Sitka Seafoods. So with that, let's get right back to today's episode.
it is allowed me to do is know that, hey, there are parts of it that are amazing and that are fantastic, but also be able to have a lot of people who've gone through the experience and go, hey, let me tell you what, this is, what's tough, or this is what's going to be tough. Or, I have a close friend who's got 3 children. They're a little farther along than I am, a little older than my children. And he's like, hanging out with your kids is the best, and it's also the most boring thing you'll ever do, right? And he's, specifically talking about like toddlers. Mm-hmm. And just knowing that, so that when I was playing with Liam and bored out of my mind sometimes, because especially when they're a year and a half, you can't communicate. You're grateful to be there, but we have these very hyperactive minds. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I don't have to judge myself. Like, let's try to get here. Let's try to be present. But yeah, you can be bored. Or, knowing that the first couple months, and I don't know if you can think back to when your children were little. Somebody said something really smart to me. It was, for the first 6 months, you're not important as a dad. You are a favorite uncle. They're not going to give you what you want as far as the feedback. They're not going to be like, oh, gaga. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He's like, and that's okay. Just be there, be the favorite uncle, support your wife. It'll still be great. And having that expectation, I think, changed what I was experiencing and feeling, because it's still super hard. And yes, there's still things that are amazing, but knowing that, you're not going to get that feedback then, but you will eventually. And now, of course, I wish I could sometimes have my kid stop saying, and he calls me gaga still. I was like, could you just not say that 100 times today? Just give me 5 minutes. So that was, I think, some of the really powerful things. And of course, there's lots of hand-me-down clothes, which is great too, because everybody's gone through it. The challenging thing, it's tough being old and chasing around, a 2-year-old. And look, I'm in great shape. I've taken care of myself. But yeah, getting up and down and up and down and up and down when you're, 45, there's days I just get tired.
Oh, yeah.
So, sometimes I do joke that parenthood should be a younger man's game or younger person's game. But
well, it goes fast.
Devices. Yeah.
All the cliches you'll hear or I've already heard are true. Mm-hmm. I still remember when my son was in a baby Bjorn at whatever, 6 months old or 2 weeks, whatever, however it was. And I remember my neighbor saying, man, it goes fast. And I was like, God, why? Just let me enjoy the day. Like, why you got to make, but I'm like, that was like yesterday. I'm like, oh my God, yeah. Where did it go?
Yeah.
And I think it's important. You said the word present earlier. One thing we've talked to a lot of dads about that in the show is like defining what that means. So like for you as an entrepreneur, I'm in the same boat. Like, and even when I was in my corporate gig, which was a very high demanding job, I had a revelation where I got home at like 6:45 a lot, and my son was going to bed at 7, and I was like, "This sucks. This is not worth it. Why? I'm not. So I'm his dad, but I'm not his dad because I'm not present." And I remember going to I remember talking to my wife, and I remember I went to my boss at the time, Angela Ronica. Shout out to you, girl. And I said, this isn't working. Like, I love my job. I love what I do at the company, but I'm not going to be, this is not sustainable. And I said, so what can we do? And we literally changed my hours, like a full on banker. Like, I got there at 7, left at 4, no matter what.
Nice.
And I think we as dads sometimes, or business people, think, oh, we're so important. No, you're not. Your phone number is not 911. And, we're all replaceable, whether we think we are or not. Everybody is. And man, once I did that, though, I was so happy. And from like 5 until 7 at home, it was like I shut my phone off essentially. I was like, it's not that important. It's important, but it's not, there's no fires. There's not like a tsunami warning.
Yeah. I mean, being in sales, like, as I know you were, we're not doctors. We're not, firefighters. We're not people that are going to deal with emergencies. So I think that is a great recognition that you had, that the time is important. And sometimes just being there, right, is the key part. It's not like, oh, you've got to be there and be 100% zoned into them. Sometimes it's just like, hey, you're there, they're doing their own thing, but at least you're physically present, because you can't replace that. So
no, they feel safe that you're there.
Mm-hmm.
So as you think about your journey, big family, networking family, networking parents, power of education, like, of all the things you've shared so far, maybe talk about what areas are you really focusing on being that ultimate leader of your household, that quarterback of your household, based on what you learned from your parents? What comes to mind when I ask you that?
It's a really good question. I think that for me, based on, again, my experience and kind of what I'm trying to figure out daily as far as being a good dad and a good quarterback, I often see my professional responsibility as facilitation and enablement, right? So if you think about, like, I've had a career as a coach and a teacher. It's like you're really trying to set people up for success, right? And I think that translates very much into what I try to do at home too. So I think, one of the things I love about my son, and he's definitely my son, as my wife points out, but he's like super independent. I mean, he's not even 2.5 yet, and his favorite phrase is Gaga, Lee himself, right? I'm gonna do this on my own. Like, he dresses himself, all these things, like he wants to do himself, which is great. And sometimes it's frustrating, but I'm like, that'll serve you well in the future. But so I really think, like, how do I, not only now, but in the future, just set you up with the skill sets that you need, with not even this, skill sets is the wrong word, with the habits and inclinations that you're developing now. I do think that there's a lot of who we are is kind of baked and boiled in. There's a lot of genetics, there's a lot of things that are just kind of, there from the beginning. But kind of the environment you grow up in it has an impact. So, to be straightforward, I tell my kid I love him a couple times a day. I'm super affectionate. Try to do all of those things. And, make, as you said this before, you make them feel safe, make them, feel secure, right? This home base. But then, at the same time, he's going to have a ton of books around. Learning is going to be important. And, something that is really important. So my wife is actually, and she's been over in the United States for quite a while, but she's an immigrant. She was born in the former Soviet Union, Ukraine. So so my son is this amazing mishmash of cultures. My family's been in the United States for hundreds of years. So it's very interesting mishmash of cultures. I mean, my wife and I met salsa dancing. So, there's just, and I bring this up because what I really want to do is make my son and both my sons have the skills necessary to be fully functioning, grounded individuals, and be able to get along with just about anybody, right? Because I really think, like, if you show up with a work ethic, the ability to learn, and the ability to get along with people, I don't know what they're going to do with their careers. Who knows? But I feel, if you have those things, and maybe some self-love or self-concept that was created because that you were loved, you're going to be, you're hopefully most of the way there. So now, how do I do that? I'm trying to figure that out every day. But that's, I guess if I put it all together, that's what it would be.
I love it. Well, you made me think of a story that what I just went through recently with my son, who he had a class that he didn't do as well on a test he wanted to do, and they gave him a chance to kind of like earn some points back if you did something. And so I said, we're gonna email the teacher and we're gonna teach you how to communicate. And I said, I want you to take the first stab. And so he did it, and then we worked on it. And he says, why are we doing this, Dad? Because I said, Ryder, we're teaching we want to teach your teacher that you care. Mm-hmm. And if he knows that you care and he knows you're trying your best, and your best might not be as good as someone else's, but if he knows it's your best, that I'm willing to bet when it comes time, if you got a B minus, C plus, B minus, you're probably going to get the B minus because he knows you care. And sure as you know what, he does his email and the teacher responds back. He goes, hey, Ryder, first, thanks for taking time to write me this. I don't get these often from students, and I appreciate it. I said, now, tell me how that made you feel, bud. He's like, it felt great. I'm like, you just differentiate yourself. It's uncommon, right? You're being uncommon. And so for me, you made me think of that story that I think that's you're teaching also the power of the golden rule,
Yeah. Rule number one in build get the relationship, not the deal.
Yeah.
Sorry, which is the title there.
Yep. It's all right. So your wife immigrated. When did she immigrate to the States?
1990. So she's been in the States for quite a while.
Did she ever go back to Ukraine?
She actually went back for the first time. It would actually have been right before Liam was born. So okay. She's been back once. Yeah.
Will you guys ever go over as a family, you think?
The Ukraine is a very contentious part of the world right now. So we'll see what happens in 10 or 15 years when that might be a possibility.
Let's stay safe. Let's channel that trip for later.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to know, in your early dad game, you got 2.5 years under your belt. We got one in the oven, priming the turkey, right?
Right.
All of us dads have gaps. My gap that I'm very self-aware about that I have to feel is patience. As a competitive person, I can feel that, and I feel it building. I'm like, I got to figure out ways to stop it. And I've got things I do, but like for you in your dad game, maybe talk about an area your game that you wish was better, that you're really working hard to improve, that maybe other dads at home might be able to relate to.
You stole mine. It's 100% patience. That is absolutely my gap. And we knew that going in, me and my wife, and I'm not it's not so much for me about like having a temper or anything like that, because I don't really, but I like you, came from a very competitive, sales oriented environment. There's definitely certain types of people that are attracted to that. And that's one of the stereotypes is we're driven. We like getting things done. We like getting things done right now. We're horrible at delegating because we're like, I can do this faster. Like, I'm not going to wait. Yeah. So all of that comes into play when you're watching your 2-year-old put on his pants, and he's putting both legs into the same pant leg for the third time in a row. And you're sitting, I will sit on my hands so I don't get up and help him. So that's a gap. And some days I've done a lot of work to try to make that not a gap. And some days I do really well. And some days not as well. And I've had to tell my wife, I'm like, yeah, that might have seemed bad, but let me tell you what I wanted to do for like 20 minutes before that.
That's funny.
So that's, that is very much. And I think that, it's not just those of us from kind of a sales background, but I think that there's definitely, that is I think a dad thing. So yeah, I think, and my father was a very loving man, but also not necessarily an affectionate one. Mm-hmm. Just because I think part of it too, looking back, 5 kids, like I truly am like, how do you have time to interact with all of them? that being the case, I am I know it could be easy to not always be as emotionally, as you use the word vulnerable before. It doesn't have to be vulnerability, just accessible.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's something I'm very focused on right now. It's easier now when they are little and they're fun. There's little bundles of energy. So it's something that I've kind of mapped out for myself. Like, okay, even as he gets older and he becomes more of his own man, still having that emotional accessibility is something I'm gonna probably have a little bit of a gap on, but I'm gonna work on.
I think my one of my mentors, shout out to him, John Kaplan. He taught me this quote that says, "It's okay not to know every answer. It's just not okay not to do anything about it." And I love that because it's like you give yourself grace, like, hey, we're going to mess up, but we're not perfect. And then as your son and child gets older, one of the things that I have really enjoyed doing is sharing my own failures with my kids. Like a couple years ago, I applied, wasn't even ready for it. Even if I got it, it would have been probably a disaster, but I applied to do a TED Talk.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's a goal of mine now, but I didn't get it. And so maybe it was bad content, bad script, maybe wrong guy, right time, whatever the reason was.
Right.
But I was like, my first thought was, I can't wait to tell my kids that I tried and I wasn't selected, but I'm not quitting. You know, and I think just creating those moments of safety that we don't got to be perfect, but quitting is not an option in this house. Like, I don't care what you do, whether you get cut from the baseball team, basketball team, but then what's next? Let's go do something else. Because I don't know. You made me think of that too when you're sharing that story, because you got to keep moving. Patience was a gap for my dad, and actually, it's funny. My dad could drop the best GD bombs, Fish, like intense GD bomb. And we would laugh as kids because it would be like, so it was almost like a staccato, like a music, like a note was so sharp. Like it was almost like, God,
yeah,
Casey.
Yeah.
And I would and then he would say a phrase called shut it up. I'm like, who says shut it up? Like either shut it, but like shut it up. And so we'd laugh again on that too, So when my dad passes, I have to say, God damn it, everybody shut it up. I got to give him some shout out when he does it.
Absolutely. Well, I always, and you probably have had this experience too. It's fascinating, and I'm only getting this now that I, am a father. So it took me a little while, but I have heard myself say things that my father said in the exact same tonation, and it's a primal. It probably goes back generations and generations. Like I think of when was the first Fisher father who said that, or my dad has a very particular sigh sometimes, which is just this, kind of not a world weariness, but world weariness, and my kids are driving me nuts. And I just did it the other day, and my wife was like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I thought, I was like, "Oh my God, that's exactly what my dad used to do." And I go, now I know what he was feeling.
That's hilarious. Well, it is funny as you start doing those things. Like one of my buddies, when I told him my dad was might be at the end of his life, he shared the nicest text ever. And one of the lines was, I never understood why the hell your dad watered the lawn at 2 a.m. I get it now. Like,
Exactly.
Like these random, my dad probably had beers in him when he was doing it, but I don't know, I was laughing.
Good for him. If that's when you can get some quiet, that's when you get some quiet.
Right, exactly. Okay, as we get ready to wrap up here, I always like to ask my guests, if all the things we talked about, and if you were to kind of summarize our conversation into kind of some actionable advice for fathers at home on ways they can become a better leader of their home based on our ups, our downs, tell me what comes to mind for you.
I think some of the highlights from our conversation, definitely, we talk about patience here right at the end, but not only the patience, but having some awareness or figuring out what your gaps are. If you're like, oh, I'm super patient, then figure out where that gap is. And I think the idea of enabling your children as opposed to having to figure out the answers for them. I think if we sum up a lot of what we were talking about, it's just your kids are going to learn from you one way or the other without you teaching them, because they're going to watch. So just figure out what behavior can you model that will enable them to be successful. I love your story about teaching your son how to send an email. Just be like, this is how you communicate with people. And, that's what I saw from my parents. All joking aside, I saw them stop and talk to whoever they ran into at the street fair or whatever it was, have that 5-minute conversation. And, I probably picked up over the years how to have those conversations. So I think those are the areas I'd really point out.
Patience, be aware of your gaps, enabling them to figure it out, which I will also enable. I will throw in there. That's like the Socratic method that I use.
Yeah.
TED-based questions. Tell me, explain, describe. It's so easy as parents for us to give them the answer, but when we ask questions and help them build their critical thinking skills, just like probably works in your sales coaching, it's so many people want the answer now. They want it like this, but they're not going to learn if we don't help them think. And that same advice I think is great for kids. So, all right, we are now going to go into the lightning round, and then I want to make sure we let people know how they can learn more about you. But the lightning round, your goal is to answer questions as quickly as you can. My job is to get really random on you, straight Uncle style.
Awesome.
Try to make you giggle. That doesn't count.
Sounds good. All right.
Okay. Tell me the last book you read.
Foundation by Isaac Asimov.
Okay. If I went into your phone right now, what song would be last heard played?
It would be my Zumba playlist. So I think it was Daddy Yankee Shaky Shaky.
Daddy,
yes, Yankee? I teach Zumba. It's a whole other random side thing. Yes.
Buddy Whack It? Okay. Tommy Boy reference right there.
Yeah.
If you were to play for the Milwaukee Bucks and you're a starting center on the basketball team, what is your walk-up song? It can't be the same one.
Oh my God. I'm just looking at the image. I'm a 5'5" dude who can't jump.
You're center. You're going to back up.
Jump Around by House of Pain.
Oh, there we go. If I went to your house tonight, what do we have for dinner?
I think we're having my wife's chicken Pizzoli soup. It's freaking amazing.
That does sound really good, especially on a cold day.
Yeah.
If you were to book a vacation in the next 10 minutes, where are you going?
Ireland.
There we go. If someone else was to write a book about your life, what would be the title?
No, really. Wait a minute.
That it?
Yeah, no, because I'm a pretty random dude too. So
okay,
yeah.
Okay, now this book that someone wrote about your life is now Hollywood found out about it. It's going to the big screen. People are going to win. The actor who won a Golden Globe for your life book, but we need to tell me who is going to star you in this movie.
It's George Clooney. I mean, we're basically twins.
Yeah, I see it. Basically twins. Yeah. I think you got him though. I think you got him. Okay, and then last question. Are you a golfer by chance?
I am not. I've done it twice, and I'm so bad that famous golfers turned over in their grave. Can't even get how bad I was. So,
okay. What's your favorite sport?
What's my favorite sport? Would probably have to be football. Okay.
If you had to pick 3 people, dead or alive, to be we're gonna make this imaginary football game. It's only 4 people on a team. You're one of them. You get to pick 3 of their teammates, dead or alive. Who are you gonna have on your team?
Oh my gosh! So I'm really bad at this. I'm really bad at knowing sports people.
It doesn't have to be sports people.
Oh, we just hang out playing some ball. Okay. Yeah. This would be super random. James Brown.
Okay.
Because I think it'd be just hilarious to hang out with. Robin Williams.
Beautiful.
Richard Feynman.
Okay.
He's a physicist. I was thinking Albert Einstein, but I'm like, he's not going to be any good playing ball. I think Feynman would probably be a little better.
All right. The lightning round's over. You made it. You giggled. I giggled. We went random. Hopefully people at home have enjoyed the shenanigans of the lightning round quarterback.
And thinking it's the end of the podcast, they can turn it off.
That's right. Okay. People want to learn about you. Tell me where we can send them to learn about all 12 books. Mess that one up. All 12 books. And tell me how people can learn about you, your consulting business. How can they get coached by you and all the experience? How can they buy knives?
Yeah. Call me. I said my contract's still valid. They're Cutco. If you get from somebody else, they are fantastic. I've had my same set 25 years. DavidJPFisher.com. That's probably the easiest place. Has all the information, contact info, etc. Or I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. That's the one social network that I do use. So linkedin.com/in/IMDfish, IAMDFISH.
Okay. This will be linked in the show notes. D-Fish, man, it's been awesome. Thanks for your time. Thanks for joining me on the Quarterback Dadcast. I'm going to give love to these sponsors. I hope they'll still be with us, but I want to give a shout out to Catch Sitka Seafoods for all the seafood lovers out there. Please, whether you're running a restaurant or a home, if you're looking for like a wholesale way to bring high-end seafood to your restaurant, give them a chance. They got impacted dramatically by COVID, but they turned my daughter, who was a quote pizzatarian, into an almost pescatarian. And
wow! All right.
She loves their cod. She hated fish, but she loves their fish. And my other sponsor has got a company called Acme Homes, Washington. My good friend Bob Cumming, who was a college teammate of mine, he now is one of the most talented home builders in the state of Washington. No, it doesn't impact folks in Chicago and Milwaukee, but if you're listening in the state of Washington, give them a chance. Research them at acmehomeswa.com.
Always support your local people.
That's right, brother. All right. Well, that time flew by. Have an awesome holiday season. This will be out in 2022, part of season 3. And I'm so honored that you decided to be part of it. Thanks so much.
You.
Awesome. See you, bud.
Thanks again, everybody, for listening to this episode with D-Fish here in season 3. Huge favor before I let you go. Please go to iTunes right now. Go to Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you consume your podcast. Please take a minute and leave us a review. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you'd like to see changed. If you have guests in mind, let us know. But leaving a review really helps us grow our audience, grow this mission to help inspire more fathers to become that ultimate quarterback of our household or of your household. So again, it'd be a huge favor, huge help, but thank you again for listening, and we will see you again next week.